Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio lunchtime talk today. So these talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. So whether you're in Bristol or far away, you can join the conversation. My name's Vic Tillotson, and for those who haven't met me before, hello. I'm Watershed's talent development lead. I'm a white woman wearing a William Morris print dress and have short brown hair. So every Friday, we throw open the doors of Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Fridays, where we offer you the chance to spend time in the space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff between 10 and 5. An especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio today. If this is the first time you've come, can you put your hand up so we can see? Oh yeah, a few people, welcome. Welcome today. So what is Pervasive Media Studio? So we're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology with everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. The studio is a partnership between Watershed, the University of the West of England and the University of Bristol. We offer studio space, which includes kind of desk space, meeting rooms, events like this one, and opportunities for residents to kind of get involved in things. And we kind of run on a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. We're a space for people to take risks with early ideas and to make space and time for collaboration as well. So a quick bit of housekeeping before we start. Feel free to move around if you want to make a cup of tea, go to the loo, whatever. Please do that during the talk. It's totally fine. We have a quieter space just to the left here, so if you need a break or a timeout for any reason, please feel free to use that. Fire exits are at either end of the studio, just over there. One of our team here will show you where to go should we need to use them, but hopefully we won't. There's accessible toilets and baby change in the corridor just next to the kitchen over there as well. So there's a Q&A at the end of the talk. For those of you watching online, pop your questions in the YouTube chat. We've got Esme with us here today, who's going to be voicing those questions in the space for us. Yeah, and if you're in the building, just raise your hand when we come to the Q&A. We've got another mic that we're going to hand to you, so if you can kind of hold that up to your mouth when you speak, because what that does is it allows people at home to hear what you're saying. So it doesn't amplify it in the space, which feels a bit strange, but it does mean that everybody can hear you. And we'll leave that mic with you until kind of the end of the question and the sort of back and forth with the speaker. So yeah, you can get news on future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, and you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram as well. So now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker for today, Marcus Smith, who's going to talk with us about StoryTrails, a VR/AR project that enabled participants to experience history where it happened. So over to you, Marcus.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi everybody, my name is Marcus Smith and I'm here to talk about StoryTrails. Anyone recognise anything on here about Bristol? Yeah, a few bits and bobs. That's in Stokes Croft. Suspension Bridge, that's the Gorilla on North Street in Bedminster. So I went around 3D scanning most of these objects and things in this new metaverse world that we created. And I will explain more what that was all about in just a GIF. Before we get going into that, I just want to introduce myself and tell you a bit more what I'm up to. So, as well as working on this over the past year, I've also been working at BCFM Radio, which is a local community radio station, and I'm sort of their head of partnerships and development, and we make podcasts and radio shows about all sorts of different topics and subjects. So if you're in the Bristol area, please do tune in. I'm also a filmmaker, just started making movies. I also do freelance work for BBC Radio 4, Radio 3, and AHRC on mostly climate change and the environment and tech. That's podcasts as well, and I do a bit of writing as well. So please do, let's connect if there's any sort of synergies in the room. So now I could attempt to explain StoryTrails from the off just by talking, but this video will do it much better.
StoryTrails is the UK's largest immersive storytelling project. It brings together augmented reality, virtual reality, and new forms of 3D scanning to communities across the country to reveal untold stories in places that we've never been before.
We are inviting people to turn up to their local library. They can have an immersive cinema experience there, emotional maps of the place where you live. They can try VR experiences made from the BFI archives, or they can go on an augmented reality trail. But this is really about experiencing local history through new technology.
The StoryTrails idea is something that I care about because it is about reminding ourselves that those places are not just special to us, but they're special to our ancestors. That they are shared spaces, not just between ourselves, but between ourselves and previous generations. So that power of using new technologies to try to imprint some of those past events onto place, onto geographically specific points in the globe, I think is really exciting.
She always loved the countryside, from childhood, I believe. She wanted to protect it.
I mean, I hope that I will hear people tell other people to go and do the trail and to go and experience it for themselves, because you won't believe your eyes. You wouldn't believe that you could stand there and watch this film footage from, 80 years ago in this place.
Remember, it's your town.
What I find interesting is the reaction that people get, because it's so new, so cutting edge. Nobody knows what to expect. And so when I'm taking the 3D picture of somebody and I show it to them, for me it's the reaction they give me when they go, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm in a game.
1,000 stories, 15 locations, 4 different types of immersive technologies in play. We could have done all of that ourselves. But instead, we wanted to put 50 new creatives into this landscape and make those stories come to life.
If we want to make this metaverse as inclusive and the best it can be, with everyone's sort of input, then I guess we've got to get involved, haven't we?
I think the most important thing that the project did was to take the creatives from the places that we were telling stories about. And there's something about that which allows these stories to really feel like they live in those places where we're telling them. And I hope audiences will feel that.
Oma is presented with a single story where we're sort of known for the worst thing that ever happened to us, and that I wanted to be able to show the diversity of our town, the beauty of our town, and I also wanted this to be a bit of a rallying call for people to defend our heritage and to celebrate our places.
They should come and experience a really fascinating Swansea story based around ice cream, but offering lots of drama. And they'll feel, I think, very proud of their city after doing the trail.
It really is like nothing that I've experienced before in terms of actually, truly immersive use of archive. It's so incredibly exciting.
I mean, who knows where this technology, who knows where the metaverse is going, but it does feel that our physical worlds and this virtual world are going to intersect, and that geography is going to be one of the triggers in those transitions.
StoryTrails in 3 words: roller coaster,
Personal.
Love.
So there you go. So just to explain further, to re-emphasize what the project was. So it's 15 towns and cities across the country. Those towns and cities that are often overlooked or don't really get this sort of art and cultural experiences. I know Bristol does. I think they chose Bristol because David Olusoga is based here. I think that's why Bristol got chosen. But the other towns were like Newport, Swansea, Lincoln, Omagh, Dumfries as well. Places where, often feel like maybe they're left out of sort of things like this. That was a real important part of the project. And in each of those locations, there were 2 creatives. So I was one of them, and I was working on the library installations, which is the story maps, which I will explain more in a little while. And then my colleague was Lucy Fulford, who was working on the AR Trails, which is available on your smartphone still. So if you want to take part in an aspect of this project that's still available, AR Trails, look for StoryTrails, and it will start from the city centre, well, College Green area, and take you around the city centre on the story about the family behind Sweet Mart. Do you know the Sweet Mart shop in Easton? So it's about that family who are Ugandan Indian, and they were thrown out of Idi Amin's Uganda in the 60s, I think, and it's about their story. So apparently they chose Bristol because the children of the family really loved the ice rink, and that was a deciding factor in that family to move to Bristol. And also on College Green as well is where they first started to sell samosas at different events and fairs. So this AR trail will take you around the city centre, and you'll get sprinkles of those different stories with imagery, with sound, as you go around. I think it's six different spots. And then also there were VR experiences as well. So this was for 2 days at the Bristol Central Library about a month ago, well, a couple of months ago now, in August. So this went around 15 different central libraries, and Bristol's was 21st, 22nd of August, and this was available for people. Over the 2 days, we had 3,000 people through the doors at the libraries. The people at the libraries were so happy. They said this is the biggest numbers they've seen since sort of pre-pandemic. A lot of people that were coming into the library they hadn't seen before. It wasn't the regulars. And I even spoke to some people there, and they said they've lived in Bristol all their lives and they'd never visited the Central Library before. So it made the libraries cool again, which I will talk a little bit more about in a little while. What I was working on specifically, which were the library installations, that was split into 2 sections. So there was an immersive cinema where people could go and sit. I went round over 2 months and collected 25 stories from people. And also I 3D scanned each person as well to create that metaverse that you saw a bit earlier, and I'll show you again in a minute. So there were 10 stories shown on an immersive cinema screen, and then the remaining 15 were on iPads that people could flick through and browse in the library as well. So that was part of that weekend in Bristol and in each location as the tour went round over the summer. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a trailer now of the metaverse that I created, the immersive cinema experience, and here's the trailer now. So there were a few things that I learned during this adventure, this journey, or roller coaster, as I described in the promo video, and we'll go through them now. So number one, I'm not David Olusoga. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I know he's on all the marketing, promotion, and publicity stuff, but he was really, really great and inspiring, and had a real positive influence on this project. So he was with it from conception to sort of figure out how it would play out, and trying to get young, interesting, inclusive, diverse creatives on board. And at the beginning of the project, he did a really good lecture for everyone that was involved in the project about how this new technology moving forwards has to be telling stories that are not usually told, and it's a real good platform to tell those stories as well. You know, we all have stories. It doesn't matter how mundane we think our lives are. There is something about us, about our friends, our family, something we do, our neighborhood, our area. We all have a story to tell, and that was a real important aspect of this project, to get those out there. And using this latest technology is a really good platform to do it. And moving forwards as well, in terms of job opportunities and careers and funding, this immersive technology is going to be an increasingly big thing. The buzzword with tech firms at the moment, you know, including the big ones like Facebook, etc., is the metaverse. this internet 3.0, where instead of us just being users of the internet, we embody it, we become part of it. And this is all interlinked with what's going on. So David was great from the outset to help us think of that as we started our journeys. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but also as part of StoryTrails, there will be a BBC documentary using archives, using some of this immersive technology that is about Covent Garden in London and the history of that, doing something similar to what we've done throughout this whole project. So that will be on BBC very, very soon. I think it's being premiered this weekend, actually, in London. So that's happening. Number 2, short form is really hard. So for each of the 25 stories that I had to collect as part of the project, originally they wanted 30 stories, and I only had 6 weeks to go around and interview 30 people, which was quite stressful, but they brought it down to 25 in the end, which I was really, really thankful for. And interviewing these 25 people, I had to get a 2-minute snippet out of them, a 2-minute snippet that conveyed a story, that conveyed an emotion, a feeling related to space and place. It sounds sort of simple, but it's really, really not. So for each person, I would interview them for roughly about 10 to 15 minutes. But then it's also you're trying to get something out of them as well. Some people talk and talk and talk and don't really go into something as deep as you want them to, or they go off on a contingent and you've got to rein them back in. So that was a real important skill that I learned in this project, is how not to faff around when you're trying to interview someone, how to get them to talk about something in the way that you want. The most important question, and this could be for any field, as a journalist, as a creative, is how did it make you feel? How does it make you feel? And that's quite often a real good question to ask, to get people to open up and be themselves and get the juicy bits that you want. So I've got an example now. Have you anyone heard of Lindsay Cole, the mermaid that often sits on the Bristol harbour side? Yeah, we got one fan. So I interviewed her about why she hangs out on the harbour side just as a mermaid, and this is her response.
So I actually swam the length of the Bristol Avon last year as a mermaid, towing a poo sculpture investigating how river pollution affects wildlife like otters, and I swam into Bristol Harbour, which was really fun. It was a bit of a rainy day, but it was magical because I actually didn't know how I was going to finish, and I was surprised by these lovely outdoor synchro swimmers, and they did a little dance at the harbour edge, and they pulled me out of the river and they circled me and sung, and it was just magical because I didn't know they were going to be there, but they surprised me because they love the water and they love the harbour, and they really appreciated me trying to promote keeping it clean. The water just gives you so much, whatever you need. If you're having a bad day, I go to the water and it gives me peace and quiet. I just love it, and I would love for it to be cleaner, and I'd love to do all we could to make the water cleaner. I think it would be a dream if we could have a designated swimming spot. Could you imagine how great that would be?
So I can remember recording that interview, and it was really, really difficult. We had so many interruptions being on the harbour side, people approaching Lindsay because she's dressed as a mermaid, so it gets a lot of attention. There was noise, all sorts. So actually trying to get to talk to her was really, really difficult. So again, it was honing that skill of being able to interview and get what you need. So that was something I learned probably the most from this project, actually, which is really, really useful moving forward. People seem to love 3D for a number of reasons. So this is one example. I didn't actually do this, but first of all, so out of the 25 people, all the 25 people I had to interview, as well as interviewing them, I had to do a 3D scan, and that was using just an iPad. And there's a free piece of software called Scaniverse, which is Scan Iverse, all one word. And it's using the LiDAR technology that are on iPads. And yeah, so I spent a lot of time interviewing people, and then afterwards I'd say, can you stand still in a pose or holding something You know, one was a yoga teacher, so I had to get her to do like a yoga pose for like 5 minutes as I went round with an iPad. There was lots of different ways you could do it. Like some people like to go around in a circle, like a spiral shape, like this. My preference was sort of a bit more robotic, I guess, but I felt like after a few months of doing it, you sort of find your best preferred way to be scanning people. And then when you show them the outcome of them, the reactions are great. They're like, oh, wow, so cool. Like always really, really positive. Some people were scared as well. They were like, oh God, oh no, wow. But yeah, that was really, really great. The software really seems to love graffiti and bright colors. So graffiti was like always a great one to scan. Like whenever I saw some street art or graffiti, I was just scanning like mad because it seemed to love it. And that was a continual thread in my 10-minute cinema piece that was played in the library. That continual thread throughout the whole piece was street art, Bristol street art. We're the home of Banksy, that's what we're famous for, it's everywhere. So that was a real important part of my piece. And it's the same with environments and spaces like this with the scanning. Like people had their own ways, their own methods of doing it, and often got better as you went along because you find and understand the software more and more and more. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, when StoryTrails was in Bristol for the 2 days in August, it was at Bristol Central Library. Yeah, 3,000 people through the doors. The librarians absolutely loved it. They loved us being there. And in the build-up to the event as well, we trained the librarians on how to use the equipment. So as well as sharing stories, we were upskilling, we were training people that wouldn't usually have access to this technology on how to use it moving forwards. And I think this is a little bit of a personal thing. I think sort of libraries really have to reimagine what they are moving forwards, with people having access to Kindles, not even reading books as much now. So I think this is a particular potential way forward on how libraries can keep up to date and expand and attract new audiences and new people as well. One of the things we did over the 2 days, as well as everything I showed you, there was a thing called Big Me, Little Me, where we'd 3D scan someone, and then we'd take a photo of them afterwards, either the 3D scanned image of them like holding themselves in their hand, or it would be a big 3D scan of them and they'd be sort of looking up at their giant self. And a real simple little task, but the kids loved it, people loved it, and it was just a real simple, easy way to show how this technology works and to make it fun and interactive. And then number 5, tech doesn't have to be bougie or cliquey. I think from the outset of this project, its real aim was to go out and about in those 15 towns and cities that don't usually have access to this technology or often sort of overlooked. London gets a lot, Bristol gets a lot as well. But apart from Bristol, it was those towns and cities that don't usually get access to this. And it was in a central library, a public space, a free space, where people may feel more comfortable going as opposed to like an art gallery or a tech hub that they may not feel comfortable with. And that was a real important aspect of this project. And then also the stories that we chose. One of the stories was about, it's actually my mum, but she's been working in a trading estate in Brislington for the past 30-odd years. And in her story, she was talking about how all the different lives and different friends that she's made in the trading estate over the years, all the different streets that she's worked on, the different factories. And I overheard a conversation on the day where a lady came and spoke to her and said, wow, your story really reminded me of when I used to work and how it used to be when we felt like we were all together, working on the shop floor, working in the factories together. And I think that was like a real highlight of me for this project, because it was about, these local stories that don't always have to be extravagant or of famous people or rich people. It was about everyday lives and stories. So the outcome of those 2 days at the Bristol Central Library and throughout the country is presented in this short video.
whole bunch more in Sheffield, Radford, all coming up. I cannot recommend it enough.
Because we have some amazing experiences just for you.
It really makes me feel like our stories are actually valued, and the more people we tell that to, the better.
It's just transcendent. It's, if you've never experienced it, it's out of this world.
It reminds you and gives you faith back in the city you live in again, hearing about the good stories going on.
More of this should happen. More history told in this format rather than in books and solid pictures.
I think it's got something for everyone, and it's nice to see something a bit different and see what can be done with technology as well.
And digital creativity is the future. It's the future for children, and I think if they really understand that they can actually get a job doing this stuff, then I think that's very exciting for them.
You know, we're getting people coming in here who've lived here forever near enough and still have finding things out that they didn't know. Just phenomenal for people to be able to do that. We are so fortunate to have StoryTrails here, and if it was up to me, you'd live here. We'd have you all the time.
So what's next? So for StoryTrails, there will be a legacy website, which is still in development at the moment, where you will be able to go online and look at all the stories that were created over the whole duration of the project in like a sort of still virtual reality 3D way. Obviously not as good with an immersive screen, but still available for people to see from their homes or on their mobile phones. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the AR trail is still available on your phone, so please go and do that in and around the city centre and College Green, just StoryTrails on your phone. Android and Apple phones, that's available on. It's just ended now, but there was a big exhibition at the BFI, British Film Institute, of StoryTrails, which had all the stories from all over the country in London for like a few weeks. So that happened. Also, some of the technology used, such as some of the screens and some of the goggles as well, they're going to be donated to a lot of the libraries that took part in the project. So there is some sort of legacy there, and people in libraries can continue to experience the VR experiences and StoryTrails, but then also maybe create own content of their own moving forwards, or showcase other content moving forwards. Also, the big immersive cinema screen, there's only one in the country at the moment, that's what I was told anyway, and that's doing the rounds around the country as well, showing bits of StoryTrails and other content. And as I mentioned, there's a BBC documentary about Covent Garden by David Olusoga using archive footage, using VR, which will be broadcast very, very soon. In terms of me, what I'm up to next, I was mentioning a bit earlier, I've started making short films, and I've actually been asked to go out to California next week to go and showcase it. So that's very exciting. I've got ongoing projects at BCFM Radio. There's a new podcast series called Your Bristol Life, and again, that's local stories through audio. So go and find that. It's on all major podcast platforms. And that's me. Also, I got an event on the 24th of October at the Wardrobe Theatre, which is a communal listening event. And I'll be playing those pieces of audio to an audience, and there'll be Q&As afterwards as well. So if you're about on the 24th of October, please do come along. That will be great. And I'm MNR Smith on all social medias, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and there's my website as well. And if there's any questions, yeah, I'll happily answer them. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Marcus. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm happy to kick off. Hi, Marcus. Thank you. That was brilliant. Yeah, we were away for StoryTrails, but I heard a lot about it afterward. My question is about you. Would you work in this space again?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. And it's already given me ideas moving forwards for future projects that I'm working on and how I can use this technology, which I don't think I would have done if I hadn't been part of this project.
Sure. In which case, we should talk.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you. It was interesting to hear you talk about the metaverse, and I just wondered what this experience had, because obviously the metaverse, there's almost two options. There's recreating the real world and then changing who gets to tell stories in it, or creating a kind of fictional new world. And I wondered if you had any thoughts about which is the most exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I guess there's a fear with the metaverse that we could create this utopia and then actually forget about the current reality that we're living in with, you know, the climate emergency and rising inequality, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like sometimes it could be used as an excuse as like an escape from us actually solving issues in the reality, physical world. So I think it could potentially go that way, or we could use it in a real creative, positive way to sort of partner with the real world, not replace it, and do something fun and positive with it. I've heard of some things like there's people being trained to do surgery now using the metaverse and virtual reality, which is apparently better than them learning in real life. So there are some positive aspects that can be used. Let's just make it sure it stays that way as much as possible.
Thanks, that was really good. I was wondering, you're using a lot of like cool flashy technology, like the scans and so on. I was wondering how you balanced like people being into that cool flashy technology versus being distracted by it and not paying attention to the stories that you're actually trying to tell.
Yeah, I guess it's about finding good stories, isn't it? And as I was talking earlier about what was really important in this project was that emotional connection, that emotional link that people have to space and place. That was really important with each story that we gathered. Not them just talking about the place or describing it. It's a building with windows. No, it's like how does this building make you feel? And I feel that's what draws people in, that emotional connection.
That's amazing, man. Congrats.
Thank you.
Incredible project. It's a shame I wasn't around in August. My question is how you did translated the VR environment into a screen. I'm curious about what sort of a screen or projection setting did you use for this?
In terms of the immersive cinema experience, yeah. So I guess I'll go back a little bit. So each of the things that you see in the so yeah, each thing in here, so that as I described, going around scanning them, so we getting like a 3D photo, and then it was working with a design studio called Nexus, and I collaborated with them. We worked together, putting all these different components that I'd scanned over. I think I did, how many scans I did? Probably like 200-300 scans over like the space of 2 months or so. And then we just put them all together like a big jigsaw to create this metaverse, this world. So that was a collaboration with Nexus, who are like a specialist sort of VR, AR design house, design studio. And there's lots of companies like that, and increasingly so. And they have a skills shortage of people that can do this sort of things as well. So,
but then you did created like a maybe you did use Unreal Engine or one sort of this software, and
yeah.
You did a physical projection in the library, right?
Yes. So in the library, it was an immersive screen. I really have an example, but it was a screen that was this like curved shapes, probably about the size of this room actually, but curved. And then we had about, spaces for like 30 people that could watch it. And it was better the closer you were, because you were a bit more immersed into it. And apparently this special screen, there's only like 1 or 2 in the country that they shipped over primarily for this project. And that was just using a projector, a special projector, but I'm not overly, in on that tech stuff aspect. But that was the best I can describe it. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing. That was absolutely incredible. I guess I've got 2 questions. First one was like, how did you get involved in it in the first place?
Yeah, a little bit by luck actually. But I guess I have a background in this. So a couple of years ago, I produced a podcast series called 12 Communities, 1 Bristol, which is available on all major podcast platforms. And each episode was based on a different area of Bristol that, again, is often overlooked. So we did Avonmouth, we did Lawrence Weston, we did Hartcliffe, Barton Hill, and it was like interviewing people from those different areas about their stories. And then also we used archive audio from Bristol Archives and just mashed them all together and created this podcast series. So I guess I did something quite similar prior to doing this, and then this just seemed like the perfect sort of step forward, and then being able to use all this amazing tech to tell stories again in a similar way.
Amazing. And the second one was, so obviously, was it only up for a weekend, the actual sort of the whole thing? What was it? And I'm sure you weren't like the sort of decision maker around, that sort of timescale, but how come it was just for such a short amount of time?
Yeah, a lot of people have said similar as well. They wish it was there for longer. I don't know, but I feel like it might have been logistical because they wanted to go around the country over the summer, and I'm guessing it's cheaper to move stuff around as opposed to having all that equipment in 15 different locations. It might have been a time frame issue as well, but I feel like with the website and the app that you can still use, and then the equipment that will be donated to the libraries around the country, there will be some sort of legacy and people can still go and experience it to a certain extent. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Given this is a project that's like replicated in 15 locations, and it seemed it was quite format driven from the beginning, which parts were you able to bring your creativity to most?
Yeah, I could pretty much decide on who I wanted to speak to. So the 25 stories, initially 30, but the 25 people that I had to interview, that was down to me, which was nice. So I could decide who I wanted to speak to, what stories I wanted to share and get out there. Also with the scanning, with the imagery, that was down to me. What 3D imagery am I going to choose to do? So that was flexible for me. And then also they set us a task at the beginning of it to create a tea towel that represents your city. And they wanted us to do that because they wanted us to set a tone or a thread throughout all the stories that they can use to create these virtual worlds. So as I mentioned earlier, for me it was street art. So I created a tea towel with just lots of different street art from lots of different places around Bristol. And that was what I wanted to portray in this piece. So you can see it, it's all around. I could probably tell you where most of them are as well. So like, that one's in like North Street, that one's a well-known one in Stokes Croft. Hope is in Bedminster as well. That's a skate park in Dean Lane, I think. And then the little mushrooms are around the harbour side. You can probably see them if you look out the window now. So yeah, that was what we had. That was the free range we had with it. And then also editing and putting these metaverses together, that was a collaboration with Nexus.
So just going back to the sort of the legacy question, the equipment got donated to the libraries. I mean, we've had talkers in the past who would love to be able to just, bring VR experiences to libraries across the country. So Sasha Juarez was here a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure what happened to her equipment, but she had a similar kind of thing. I'm wondering about the feasibility of, would it be, do you think it's even possible, because you've got sort of, feet on the ground experience of working in a library, them having like a standard capability? I'm thinking like how they sent out BBC computers in the 80s sort of thing. If libraries had this sort of standard platform and people could bring, these kind of experiences to them, is that feasible, do you think? Or is it just too much expertise required? Is it too fiddly? Is the equipment too fragile? Or that kind of stuff?
I think it's becoming really more feasible, because the technology that was used in this project, particularly with the iPad and the scanning, it was really easy to use. So I think with a little bit of training, a little bit of practice, like most people could use that technology and equipment. So it's really accessible. And then also by training the librarians in the build up to the event, and I think there's some afterwards as well, then I feel like it will be more feasible if people know what they're doing, plus the technology becoming easier to use. And I think that will become better over time as well. But that's just my opinion.
That's good to hear.
Esme, was there any questions online?
So just a comment from Eleanor Freeman, just to say, I've got a photo of my son as a giant outside City Hall, scanned and photographed by the library staff at the Words on Wheels event. Smiley face.
Great. Yeah, so I guess that's an example of it happening, yeah.
Yeah. Chris T says, thanks guys, where's your event on the 24th?
Oh, Wardrobe Theatre in Old Market.
Cool.
It'll be like a communal listening event. It's called In the Dark, and then it will be the room will be total darkness, and then there will be a whole host of different audio documentaries and pieces, and then like Q&As afterwards. It really works actually. Cool. Really good experience. So yeah, all come along.
Cool, thank you. And last question from Claire. Will Bristol have access to the kit for using again via the libraries? So I guess asking if the equipment will
So yeah, as I said, equipment will be donated to Bristol Central Library, particularly the goggles for the VR experiences. And there will be a website that people can use and go on to look at all the stories and listen to them. And also the app is still available, StoryTrails, and that'll be available for at least another year or so, that people can go around the city centre and learn about the family behind Sweet Mart.
Is there any more questions in the space? I had one question, actually. I mean, you've mentioned street art quite a lot as we've gone through, and I was just wondering with that, what kind of image did you want to portray of Bristol? Like, what did you really want to reveal about kind of what's going on here, sort of your hometown, whether you could offer any reflection on that?
Yeah, sure. So as well as the street art and graffiti I wanted to show and really push out there, because that's what Bristol's well known for. I mean, there's walking tours just based on that alone, and being the home of Banksy. So that was something I really wanted to put out there. But another aspect of Bristol I really wanted to share was its independent, do-it-yourself mentality. It's that mindset that was really important for me to convey. So out of the 25 stories, there's a few examples of that. One of the stories that I collected was about a guy called Chris Schemer. He's got the most Bristolian accent I've ever heard in my life, and he runs a boxing gym in Knoll West, and he said openly in an interview, like he was bullied as a kid, he was beaten in a children's home, and boxing was his escape. Boxing is where he learnt to defend himself and look after himself, and by him opening this gym in Knoll West is his way to help young people not to feel that way, not to go through that experience, and to be able to defend themselves. So that was his, way to go and do it, and he go and did it without no experience, no funding, and just created this amazing facility in Knoll West. So yeah, just an example of that independent, do-it-yourself mindset, which I wanted to portray, as well as the street art.
Thank you. Well, if that is it for questions in the space, we might wrap it up there today. But thank you so much, Marcus, for coming in and talking to us about it. And yeah, please do go and try out the trails that he's mentioned that are still available, and go to the event on the 24th at the Wardrobe Theatre. So yeah, if you want to stick around and hot desk today or find out more about what we do, then there's various members of the studio team here, Danielle at the back, Martin here at the front, myself. So do come and grab us if you've got any questions or want to find out any more. If you're watching online, you can always drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions as well, and we'd be really happy to answer those. So yeah, thank you so much for being here today. We'll see you all same time, same place next week. Thank you so much.